The question I'm most frequently asked when I talk about my work and I describe what I do, people will say, how can you do that? Aren't you afraid? Aren't you scared? Aren't you terrified? And my question is answered when I listen to Wilfredo, when I engage with the people who are described in this book. How could I not do this? How could I not be amazed constantly by their lives, by their struggle, by what they deal with, by their resilience? They do not merely survive. The gang members that I know have had funny, sad, tragic, amazing lives. In this book, there is death. In this book, there is struggle. And in this book, there are people who do not merely survive. They are people who prevail. They are people that we need to look at and marvel at and understand with all our hearts. And I think that rather than going on and talking with you about my perceptions, I think it'll be much more interesting for us to have a conversation. And Noelle is going to ask me some questions because we've talked a little bit about the book. And then we're going to open it up to you for questions. And yes, you can ask me or ask Will, because I could never, ever have this book. I could never, ever have written this book without the sharing and the openness. And I want to stress this, the absolute trust and faith in me that these former gang members, well, both active and former, exhibited. And I am forever in their debt because of that. So thank you, and we'll talk a little bit about the book. I'll have Noelle ask me some questions, and then perhaps you can as well.
Great. Let's applaud them first. Thank you both. Thank you very much. And I guess when I first heard about the book, one of the things I was really curious about was maybe that some of the challenges you experienced as a woman, and someone who was maybe some of the cultural barriers you may have experienced too.
Well, and I think that's the great question, because that's always the one that accompanies, weren't you afraid? And there's a problem with being a woman. There was some problem with being white, although the irony is, I would say I was Greek, which I am. I am 100% a purebred Greek woman. And how many of you saw My Big Fat Greek Wedding? Okay, it's a documentary, all right? That's my family. Anyway, so that my whiteness wasn't an issue, but being a very small woman in this environment was, in fact, scary. And I couldn't do what a man would do. I always had what I would loosely refer to as a bodyguard. I always had a gang member, whether active or former, with me. Because you can go into different areas, and they are, as one of my favorite young women, Shamika, will tell me, they're tricky. And there are places that look very bucolic and very nice and very pleasant. There's housing developments, there's little neighborhoods, and if you walk down the wrong street at the wrong time, even during the daytime, you could run into something you're not supposed to see. You could be somewhere very much where you are not supposed to be. So, and the other thing is, I like to go out at night. And I like to see the activity that was happening in Los Angeles very late at night. So it's not something I can do driving my little Prius. And what I wound up doing was I would always have gang members with me. And they took care of me. They protected me. There were, I will not lie, there were some dicey situations. I have a gang member I work with. His name is Big Mike. And let me tell you, he lives up to his moniker. He weighs 350 pounds, and I never feel so safe as when I am with Big Mike and kind of hide under the crook of his arm. So I had to be very innovative, and what I wound up doing was I had a gang member with me all the time, wherever I went, whenever I went there. I still do it. And by having somebody with me, I had a guide with me who would explain what things meant. And I could never have learned it on my own. And when you look at the title of the book, it's implicit in the title. It's what I learned. It's what I was taught. I don't know anything. I'm the student.